It was approaching Halloween. We were in the middle of October. My cousin Connor's birthday is October 15th, so for his 12th birthday, we all went over to our Uncle Aiden and Aunt Nava's house, as they were throwing him a family birthday party. We have a pretty big family, and so our family gatherings can often get hectic. It was still warm outside, so the party was mostly in the backyard. Their house is pretty big, and we always used to love playing hide-and-seek type games because of it. Connor and I are the same age. My older brother David is 2 years older than me. He would play with us too. Our other cousins were a little older, but they'd still play with us too. We would just make teams and take turns as hiders and seekers and give each other time limits to find the opposing hiding team. If you were found, you'd have a chance to run outside to the backyard to be safe. If you managed to not get tagged, we could use the whole house minus our aunt's and uncle's bedroom, and I'm not exaggerating when I say there were hundreds of places to hide in the basement. There's a separate room that's considered Aunt Nava's fashion room, as we call it. She's a fashion designer, and inside of it, she has a bunch of mannequins with different pieces of clothing she's designed. Some are full-body mannequins, others are just torsos without heads and regular stands underneath them. She also has some studio lights, some official camera equipment, and a green screen drop. We had been playing the game for a little while already. David and I were hiding now. We both chose to hide in the basement. David hid somewhere in the main section of the basement, while I hid in the fashion room. I actually grabbed 2 blankets from the ottoman in the basement and brought them into the fashion room, one for me to hide under and the other one I was going to throw over one of the mannequins as a decoy. With the blanket thrown over it, it genuinely looked like it could be a person hiding underneath. I thought it would be a funny little gotcha moment whenever someone yanked the sheet off of it. So, I got into my hiding position under a desk in the corner of the room and I hid under the blanket. Now it was a waiting game. That was honestly a big chunk of the game, if your hiding spot was good. After quite a long time, I heard commotion outside in the main room of the basement, as David and one of my cousins were laughing and yelling, presumably as David was being chased around the basement. I heard them then stomping up the stairs. By the sound of it, David was trying to make it to the yard without being tagged. After that, I waited in silence for over 10 minutes easily. I was getting uncomfortable in this position and quite honestly bored. Finally, David came downstairs into the room and called my name, and then he said the food was being served outside, so the game was over. I was starving. I hurriedly rushed upstairs into the backyard where all the catered food was now out and being served. At some point after eating and having a conversation with Aunt Nava, I remembered that I totally left those 2 blankets in her fashion room. Most importantly, that I left one over her mannequin, which she would not be happy about. So, after going to the bathroom, I went back down to the basement and to the fashion room where I turned on the light and saw that the blanket was no longer on that mannequin but rather covering something else. It appeared to be another mannequin, though this one seemed to be propped in a seated position, which I wasn't aware of any mannequins that were in a seated position. The closer I got, I started to realize that it was moving and I heard breathing. On top of that, there was this funky smell that wasn't there before. There was a person under there, but who? I laughed and said, "Who is that?" They didn't answer. I felt this feeling of uneasiness growing in my stomach. I looked down to see if I could see the shoes they were wearing, but what I saw were the bare feet of a black person. Nobody at this party was black back then. I turned and headed for the door. I rushed back outside and said to my uncle to call the police. "There's someone in the basement." Others overheard me and panic quickly ensued. My uncle and a few others rushed down to the basement. I followed behind. When we got to Aunt Nava's fashion room, the blanket was now on the floor and whoever was underneath it was gone. I swore up and down that someone was just underneath it, explaining the bare feet and the smell. A bunch of family members searched the whole house and ultimately my uncle called the police, taking my claims very seriously. When the police showed up, it was kind of a whole scene, and everyone at the party was concerned. Neighbors even came out to see if everything was okay. Every possible hiding place was checked, and no one was in the house. I didn't make it up, though. It was genuine what I saw, and I just wish he did turn up so that everyone would have seen I was right. Even if mostly everyone did believe me, I still just wanted them to see what I saw for themselves. During parties, they leave the doors unlocked since family circulates in and out for hours. So it's no shocker that someone off the street could have just walked right in, maybe a homeless person, which would account for the smell. The whole thing still just felt so crazy, and it's a haunting memory for sure. During my senior year in college, I was following a particular politician and going to rallies and other events. In my spare time, my friends and I were having a ball, and we loved being involved. One particular rally I went to was in the city. My friends and I took a train in and enjoyed ourselves. On the way back home to our university, I noticed a guy sitting across from us that I had recognized from campus. He was pretty cute, and I remember seeing him around as we must have had some mutual friends. I said hi to him, and to my delight, he also recognized me. We spoke for a few minutes and discovered we were both at the same rally. By the end of the train ride, he asked me for my phone number. I remember thinking, wow, a cute guy and we have some things in common. I gave him my number, but I didn't think much past that. About a week later, I received a text from him asking if I was free that weekend and if I would be interested in meeting up and having a drink. This particular time was during a break from school, so not many people were around. For whatever reason, I had chosen not to go home. In my naive mind at the time, I thought, great, I have my place all to myself. I met him at our local bar, and we had a few drinks. It was pretty quiet for a Friday, as it was break time, and after an hour or two, we decided to leave. I invited him back to my place for a bottle of wine and to hang out some more. He wound up staying the night and leaving in the morning. But when I woke up, for whatever reason, I had an uneasy feeling. Nothing bad had necessarily happened per se, I just didn't like how things had gone. I felt like he was so serious, not laughing or smiling the entire evening, although he always had a drink in his hand. I realized he wasn't really drinking them. The entire evening, he was kind of shifty and nervous. The only way I can describe it is like he was on a mission and waiting for something. These were all red flags to me. I felt bad, but I was just not interested in this guy. To my relief, he didn't text me for a while after that, and I assumed he came to the same realization that it just wasn't a good match. That is until about 2 to 3 weeks later, when he wrote me a message telling me that he's been busy but really wants to meet this weekend and catch up. This particular weekend, my older sister was having a large party for her husband's birthday at their house a few towns away. A few of my friends and I were going, and there was always a large group of people there at the parties, about 50 to 60. Now, let me be clear, these parties were not your typical get wasted and stay up until the cops get called type of college parties. They were more of an adult type party, given my sister's husband is fairly older than us. Don't get me wrong, there was plenty of drinking going on, they were very fun, just more of an adult type barbecue with day drinking. My 2 girlfriends and I were going to spend the night, as I was going to drive there, but obviously, we would be drinking. The party started early at 12 p.m. Against my better judgment, I invited him to the party, thinking it couldn't hurt. I gave him the address and time. He seemed very interested and agreed to come. The day of the party was really fun, and my friends and I were having a blast. I must admit I did have a sinking feeling, and I was not looking forward to seeing this guy. Then, to my absolute and utter relief, I got a text from him saying that he would be unable to make it. I could finally relax and enjoy the party. By about 12 a.m., everyone was exhausted from a day of full-on drinking, and the party was winding down. Most of all, the guests had gone home except my friends and I and a few other guys, friends of my sister's husband, who were also sleeping there. And of course, my sister and her husband. My sister has one guest room, which was taken, and a fully carpeted and finished basement. We had various blankets and pillows, and we were all going to sleep down there on the couches or pretty much anywhere you could lay. As I'm about to go down to the basement and get ready for sleep, the man walks through the front door, no knocking, no text, no anything, just confidently walks straight into the house. I don't know why, but my initial reaction was fear. I pretended to be happy to see him, though, and I gave him a small hug. I asked him why he was there, to which he never gave a real response. All the lights were out and everyone was gone. I was gesturing around and hinting at him that the party was over and that he had missed it. I felt bad that he had made the effort and decided to speak with him for a few minutes before I went to bed. We talked. I told him I was going to get ready for bed and that I was sorry he missed the party. He just says, "Yeah, that's fine." This dude is just not getting the hint to leave, so I leave the room and go to change my clothes and set myself up a bed, brush my teeth, etc. I'm just hoping that he will leave, but I don't hear any movement from the other room. When I come back to the living room to check and see if he's actually still there, he is, and he's asleep on the couch. I obviously found this strange, but I just assumed it was late and that he must have been really tired. He didn't seem out of place, as there were various other people sleeping at the house as well. I went to the basement and found myself a place to sleep on the floor. About 30 minutes to an hour later, I'm lying on the floor still awake, thinking about how weird it is that he showed up. It's pitch black, and there are a few other people sleeping there, including my friends. I hear someone in the dark slowly coming down the stairs. I see they're holding a cell phone light to guide them. As the figure reached the bottom of the steps, I see that it's him. Now, he has never been to this house. This isn't a nice suburban area, not a frat house, and I did immediately think it's weird that he would randomly be walking through a house of a person that he doesn't know. I pretended to be asleep as I lay there frozen. I suddenly feel a tap on my shoulder. He doesn't say a word. He is over me and trying to wake me up. I don't move and I pretend to be asleep. I lay there in the dark silence and I'm listening for his footsteps to walk away. I can tell he is holding a light over me. Then, with no warning, this man takes a step back and, with his boot on, kicks me full force in the face. I'm not talking about a little tap with his foot to wake me. No, full force boot kicks me directly in my face. My face goes numb. I didn't know what just happened. I can feel blood running down my nose. I open my eyes and look at him, and all I can remember saying is something like, "Why did you do that?" He just stared at me blankly and said nothing, then turned around and walked back up the steps. I lay there paralyzed in fear, my heart beating 1,000,000 times a minute. I don't know how long it was until I gathered the courage to get up, but eventually I army crawled in the dark over to my friend. Another man near her wakes up as well, and I explained what happened. We were all half drunk, dazed, and confused to say the least. I can't stay in this basement. I know he left, but I was just too scared. My friend and the other guy offered to take me upstairs so I could sleep in my sister's room. So I go into my sister's room and lay next to her bed on the floor and shut the door behind me. But unfortunately, there was no lock. I don't know how, but eventually I fell asleep. At some point, it's now morning. I wake up to my sister leaning over me. She asks, "What happened to your face and why are you in my room?" Right as I'm about to answer her, my friend, who had helped me the night before, comes flying into the room. She tells us that the guy is still there and asleep on the couch. She runs out, and I can hear her screaming at him to get up and get out. I hear him arguing back and asking where I am. My friend tells him that I've left, and he begins arguing that he knows my car is still there. I have no idea how he knew which car was mine, as he had never seen it before, and that I hadn't taken my purse. Eventually, he leaves. After that night, he wrote me a message a few days later as if nothing had happened, asking me to hang out again. I blocked him and I've never heard from him again. I graduated only 2 months later and thankfully never saw him on campus. To this day, I have no idea why he kicked me in the face and how he had the balls to stay after that. I have learned my lesson about giving out my phone number. The story took place just 2 weeks ago. I've always had a fear of basements since I was a kid. Now that I'm 18, my fear is obviously subdued a little bit, but I still glance over my shoulder at any noise I may hear behind me, and I might get that slight butterfly in my stomach feeling when I'm alone. Well, on this cold Friday night, I was home alone. Since our biggest TV is in the basement, that's where I usually go, especially to play video games. I was playing Fortnite with my friends, some crazy popular first-person shooter game. I had headphones in and was really invested in the game. Yet, even over the loud sound effects through the headphones, I knew I heard something come from behind me, like a thunk. I took off the headphones and examined the back of the basement. Now, our basement is huge but also extremely cluttered and messy. If I wanted to actually thoroughly examine what's behind me, I'd have to get up, that's how bad it is. But I didn't feel that was necessary. I found it unsettling any time I heard a noise. But I really didn't think it was anything to be concerned about. I tried to continue playing, however, I wasn't able to give my full focus anymore, not with part of me constantly thinking about the noise. I took off the headphones and played with them off just because I was feeling extra paranoid and wanted to hear my surroundings. Shortly after taking off the headset, there was a sudden clank sound with a metallic, echoing ring to it. I turned off the system, now in shock. This was an intentional sound made by someone or something. I walked really slowly to the back side of the basement when I laid eyes on the big metal air vents in the corner. That's when it hit me that that was most likely the source of the sound. I got as close as I felt comfortable, then stopped and just looked at the air vent for a second. I got a terrible, painful feeling in my stomach, and I felt like the life was literally being drained out of me when I saw a hand reach out from the air vent and start waving me over. Then a deep, raspy voice said, "Come here, I need help." At first, I didn't run, I just gradually stepped backwards with my mouth hung open, looking at the vents. The person's hands gripped the vent and started shaking it aggressively, obviously trying to break it open. I screamed, "I'm calling the cops," but the shaking didn't stop. I did what I said, I called the cops and told them to send someone right away. The operator told me to go to a room upstairs with a weapon, lock the door, and hide. I was the most scared I'd ever been in my entire life, and the pain and fear of the situation only became worse when I heard a door bust open downstairs. I could hear a maniac screaming at the top of his lungs. I'm not lying when I said he was screaming things like, "Where are you? I'm gonna kill you." I heard him run up the stairs. He probably ran up 2 stairs for every step because he was up the stairs in like 3 seconds. My heart was in my throat when he tried the door knob to the door and started pounding on it so hard I could see the door caving in a little bit. I thought he was actually going to break the door down. I had to climb out the window or I'd be a goner. I think he heard me, though, because the banging stopped. I jumped from the window to the bushes below, and with the right stroke of luck, a cop car pulled up in front of my house. I basically ran into the officers' arms, begging them to go inside and get the man. They told me to wait in the police car, which they locked, while they both went inside the house with their guns drawn. Not even 5 minutes later, the 2 officers came out, and they were holding the man in cuffs. The man in cuffs took my place in the back seat of the cop car, and for that moment, until the cops drove away, he was giving me the most evil, hate-filled stare you could ever imagine. That stare still haunts me. The whole experience still haunts me. I still hang out in the basement occasionally, but nowhere near as much. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.